The other day I was telling my friends this in my WhatsApp group earlier. We were all talking about getting older. I was like, the other day I was having a wank and I just stopped. Well, that's what being in your 30s is like. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's 1:30 p.m. I should give this a go, as I've been doing for the last 18 years. And no, halfway through it, I was like, what am I doing?
Podcasts. A Frontier. These are the voyages of the podcast Captain Slug. Its ongoing mission to explore strange new episodes, to seek out new jokes and new references, to split infinitives that no one has split before. Captain Slug, Stardate 46. These are the continued voyages of myself, Eddie Edwards, and my colleague, Mr. Mark Bench, as we trek our way through all of Star Trek. How you doing, Mark?
Yeah. I successfully masturbated to completion today. Which is a reference to something that you didn't hear off screen.
Or something I'm going to put in the cold open. I don't know.
Yeah, do it. It's not something I do every day.
What, masturbate to completion? Does it sometimes take you 3 or 4 days?
I feel like I don't know what it is about myself and the way that I think about myself, but for some reason my brain tells me that people think that I masturbate a lot more often than I do. And then I have to start thinking to myself, why would they even have a number? Like, why would they look at me and go, yeah, that guy probably? Because I guess it's a thing. Like when the conversation turns around to having a wank, like you can probably pretty easy pick out the people in a crowd that do it like all the time.
Yeah, there's a broad spectrum of healthy numbers, and then there's a category. And I don't think there's nobody in the world who masturbates a little bit too much, if you know what I mean. Because you're either in the healthy numbers or you masturbate way too much.
Yeah, I'd say I'm pretty healthy. When I was a teenager, the problem was I wouldn't let myself recharge. And if you're listening to this and you are 18 years old, hopefully we don't have anyone younger than that. If you're listening to this and you are 18 years old, do it. No, do it. Do it. Do you know what? Do it as much as you can, because I'll tell you, it's what's the word I'm looking for? Like decreasing, like deprecating. No. Depreciation.
Yeah,
it's
depreciation
of depreciating returns.
If you're gonna do it as much as you can, just don't push yourself to more and more extreme viewing material. That's that's how Dharma got started. It doesn't do it for you anymore, and you have to keep going further and further, and eventually you're killing a hitchhiker. That's
it. Right. There's two things you got to understand. Sean, right, is that at the age of 34, the best wank you will have that year isn't as good as the third wank that you had today, right? But what you've got to do is you've got to start programming yourself. I'd say around about 19, 20, right, to just be like, try and get your brain off of the novelty kick. Just pick some stuff and just run with it. Right?
Yeah.
And then just
pick a thing that's relatively harmless and just dig into that category.
Aye.
Yeah.
And if you do feel the need to escalate, 10% at a time, right? And think of it, what to do, right, is get yourself a whiteboard.
I'd offer a different piece of advice. I'd say if you're interested in a certain kink, find the most extreme version of that, and remember how you feel looking at that, which is repulsed. And when you come close to that again, that level of material, remember that feeling and ease back.
Or alternatively, get a whiteboard. And like in the video games that you play when you build a skill tree? Make yourself like a porn skill tree that has a definite endpoint. And then once you have achieved that, once you've incrementally built 10% on, say, feet, and then you get to the end, you're the master of feet, right? Just call yourself the foot master, and then move on to things like, I don't know, what are regular people in women's lower backs? Like, work on that, right? And then eventually you will become the wank master.
Be careful though, because it is it is like Oblivion, not Skyrim. Skyrim's a very gentle leveling system. Oblivion, you can spend 8 hours putting all your skills in the wrong things, and the game is unplayable, and that's something you want to avoid. Yeah.
And even if you are not circumcised, still use lube every now and again, especially if you're looking down the barrels of double digits in a day, right? If anything else, it's going to prevent friction burn. So, how have you been, Eddie?
It's been a sad week in the Edwards household, as you can imagine. My dog is named after Jessica Fletcher, and we lost Angela Lansbury this week, which has also ruined several wanks. But I found out that she was just the nicest person. If you're ever watching Murder, She Wrote, interesting fact: the black guy, never the murderer. Angela Lansbury insisted on that. There's one episode where there is a black killer, but it's in a mainly black community where but it turns out that the murder victim was even worse and was going to kill like 3 people if he didn't get stopped. So that's the only time there was a black killer in Murder, She Wrote. Also, there is apparently an episode in season 3 that has no speaking parts for men.
I think what you've described there is that Jessica Fletcher, and by extension Angela Lansbury, were segregationists. What they wanted, the reason that there's no black killers most of the time in Cabot Cove is because the places that Jessica Fletcher would go, there's no blacks allowed.
No, I was assuming that the murders where a black person had committed it was a quicker solve, so it wasn't worthy of a full episode. She walked in, well, it's obviously that one.
It is really weird that
you've already arrested.
It is really weird when she goes to the black community and she just starts dropping N-bombs just all the time.
You're using a rap name of Angela Damsbury.
Yeah, sad times to learn that a woman was dead who I was almost certain was already dead.
Yeah.
I know you're a big Murder, She Wrote fan in that, but I'll be honest, my exact reaction was, oh.
We're in this house, so we're observing a 10-day period of mourning. Every chat, if you turn TV on in my home at the moment, it's just Murder, She Wrote on a loop. But that's because I've got the Murder, She Wrote box set.
That's what it'll be in my gaff when Dan Harmon dies. What I'll do is I'll play Community and Rick and Morty and the film Monster House on a loop. And if anyone laughs, I'll reprimand them. We're in a period of national mourning. Dan Harmon is dead. Hopefully it never happens. He's lost a lot of weight. He looks good. He looks a lot better than Angela Lansbury did at the end.
Here's the thing, though. With Angela Lansbury's passing, there's been a lot of stories that have come out about how great a person Angela Lansbury was. Like, so if you were like a jobbing actor in Hollywood, it was an open secret that you, if your health insurance was going to lapse, you'd reach out to Angela Lansbury and she'd get you like a recurring role in. But she wrote in a recurring character because the actress had MS and needed health insurance and stuff like that. So I think that's really cool. But I hate to say this, I like Dan Harmon's work, but when he dies, the stories that come out about him are going to be unpleasant.
Oh, I can't wait. It's why I feel it easy to make jokes about Angela Lansbury, because I feel like she would have appreciated them. I feel like she was down for... I mean, I guess I don't know if she ever played up to the rumours that she was the killer the whole time.
No, she didn't. That would have been a great final episode.
Well, from what I understand, they talked about a movie where that was the case, where it turns out she'd just done them all, and the movie would explain how she had in fact done all of them. No, she was a great person. I mean, obviously she's willing to go and hang out in the black section of Cabot Cove, where she runs a weekly open mic rap battle night. But I mean, they can't. As long as they stay on the East Coast.
Yeah, she's not welcome in the West Coast. Let's be fair.
No, she's no big old. Well done. I left my martini to you.
Yeah,
I made a martini before the show.
Yeah, because Robbie Coltrane has also died.
Because Robbie Coltrane died. Now you might think that's unrelated. Yeah, I didn't have any whiskey in the house, but I did have vermouth and gin.
Yeah,
and ice.
I'm gonna
no olives, but I'll sacrifice the olives as like a tribute.
Yeah,
it's what I would have wanted.
Pour out a jar of olives for Robbie Coltrane. Yeah, or watch Goldeneye. Do whatever.
He was 72, man. He was old as fuck, wasn't he?
There's a lot of old guys. There's a lot of fat guys. There's not a lot of old fat guys.
No. No, he done well, man. Yeah. I mean, he wasn't looking very good. I don't want to sound insensitive. I hope his family's all right and that, but you know.
Yeah. Anyway,
frankly, he was living on borrowed time. I'm sorry, Robbie. I raise my martini glass to you.
Yeah,
it's what you would have
Cheers
wanted.
to Robbie Coltrane.
Any other celebrity deaths this week to discuss?
No, hopefully none die during the podcast. Other than like the only major death to report is Liz Truss's career. But that's dragging on for some time. Let's talk about Star Trek.
I don't know. Just before we, so I can't remember if I told you, or it might have been on this podcast. But I basically am so disgusted with the current cabinet that I didn't learn who any of them were. I haven't watched, like, I know Liz Truss is the Prime Minister, but the only thing I know about, because I occasionally host pub quizzes, and I do say to people, if your team name makes me laugh, I'll give you extra points, right? But obviously I have quite a dark sense of humour, so the team names that win are usually really weird. The biggest scoring name in history was a team who called themselves Daddy, what's wrong? Why are you crying? Mummy isn't breathing. This doesn't feel very much like Christmas. But I always tell people, I'm like, don't just do quiz. Like, I have heard every quiz-based pun in the English language. They're never good. They're never clever, and they still insist on doing it. So the only thing I know about the current cabinet is that the guy who just got sacked today has a name that sounds like Quizzy Kwarteng or something.
Yeah. It's
is it Quasi? Is that his real name?
I don't know if it's Quasi Kwarteng. I don't know if he actually got fired because I've been not paying attention.
He got fired.
It's because, did he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He got fired like an actor on Murder, She Wrote, who got themselves health insurance.
Oh yeah, because the thick of it thing's been doing the rounds, hasn't it? The line fired after 12 months, like you fucked up. Fired after 1 week. Looks like he fucked up.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So I feel that Liz Truss's strategic approach to the cabinet has been incorrect, and she could have benefited from watching this episode of Star Trek.
This is going to be quite an interesting episode of this podcast, because I watched this episode about a week ago, and I do not remember what happens in it.
Right. Okay. I want to start by saying this is a episode that has, in my opinion, the best single line of dialogue that Jean-Luc Picard has in the entirety of Star Trek. So this is the Enterprise is doing some war games to test the crew. Well, mainly to test Riker. They're going to give him like a ship that doesn't work properly. He's got 48 hours to get it working with a crew of 40.
Yeah.
And then he's going to like fight the Enterprise, and they're going to see if he can beat it. And there's like a strategy expert on board to like oversee things. And obviously Riker cheats, but he shows off, and it's all about how the guy is underestimating Riker because he doesn't think he's good. But that's not the important thing. The important thing is that the guy is called Simar Kolrami. He's a Zakdonian, and he's one of the actors. If you don't recognise him from his face, you'll recognise him from his voice.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a classic that bloke actor. He's the
Doctor in Total Recall.
That's exactly what I wrote down. Yeah. But so there's a game that he's like an expert. He's the best player in the universe at, called Stratagema.
Yep.
We don't know how this works. But you put things on your fingers and then you wiggle your fingers. The best.
I think it's supposed to be like a 4-dimensional drafts. Or checkers.
Yeah.
We call them one thing and Americans call them the other.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
And Riker wants to play him, and he knows he's going to lose. He's just doing it for the honour of playing him. And then they manage to engineer the guy to like have a game against Data. And Data loses to him.
Yeah.
Despite the fact that Data is a computer.
And then Data becomes a real big sad boy for a while.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
It's not an emotional lack of confidence. It's like an intellectual lack of confidence. He believes that he must have be malfunctioning on some level and be unaware of it, and therefore thinks he can't do his job properly. Right. This is why.
Yes, I remember all of this episode now.
Yeah, and yeah.
I remember having a lot of problems with it.
It's not a great episode, but it's got the line that Picard says. Picard has to go. Basically, Pulaski and Troy talk to the captain and say, like, to Picard, like, Data's having a crisis of confidence because he lost a board game, which he shouldn't technically be able to do. We need to go talk to him. So Picard goes to talk to him and tells him to like basically suck it up, and sort it out. And that is when he says what I think is the best line in all of Star Trek, which is, "It is possible to make no mistakes and still lose, Data. That isn't weakness. That is life."
Yeah.
That's the best. That's one of my favourite lines in anything.
Yeah.
It's a real good line.
A lot of my favourite lines from Star Trek come from the 2009 movie. Because that's the kind of guy that I am. Like, as a creative, like, don't ever give me Star Trek, because I'll do Star Trek 09 again. Even though I recognise, as like a Star Trek fan, that Next Generation is better and Strange New Worlds is better. It's like, yeah, but this story that I will write will be Star Trek 09, because that's the only story I'm interested in telling, which is Star Wars.
Yeah, Star Trek 09 was J.J. Abrams was given Star Trek, and what he did was he made a Star Trek movie that was the Star Wars movie.
Yeah. So this I'm going to start this story, but it's going to go somewhere. So I'm currently on the waiting list. I think I've discussed it before. Also, I re-listened to a few of these, and I'm like, I constantly say how I've discussed this before. So if anyone is out there wanting to make T-shirts, there you go. But I'm I'm on the waiting list to get seen for having autism. And having looked into it, obviously my whole life I've been me. So I'm normal and everyone else is weird. But the thing that I do, the thing that it doesn't infuriate Laura, it severely confuses her, is that when I'm drunk, when I'm high, when I'm bored, I will just watch bits of films. Like,
right.
I won't sit and watch the whole film. I'll be like, right, I'm going to watch I've got 20 minutes, I'm going to watch the 3 best scenes from Men in Black that I've seen over and over again, right? So I do that quite often with Star Trek 09. Like, Star Trek 09 is very much a come in from the pub, and I'm a bit hammered, but that's alright, I've got 6 cans in the fridge. Let's whack on Star Trek 09 and just fast forward past all the stuff that maybe I don't want to see. So there's like certain bits. So my favourite lines are just like really boring little exchanges in Star Trek 09. Like, I really like that bit where Scotty tells that wee guy to get to fuck. I watch that all the time. Or generally my favourite line in Star Trek 09 is at the very end after they've let go of the red matter. There's a really cool exchange between Kirk and Spock and Nero. Nero's on the viewfinder and Kirk comes on the bridge and he says something along the lines of, your ship's been compromised, you will be unable to escape the singularity without assistance, which we are willing to provide. And then Spock turns around and says, Captain, what are you doing? And Kirk says, I thought it's logic, Spock. I maybe doing this will help re-establish like communications with the Romulans. It's logic. I thought you'd like that. And Spock goes, nah, not this time. And then it's you turn around and Eric Bana is like obviously ready to deliver like a villainous monologue. He's like, I'd rather suffer the death of Romulus 1,000 times than accept help from you. And Kirk just goes, you've got it, whatever. Fire phasers. So I like that, but yeah, but there's so there haven't really been any lines from Star Trek from Next Gen that have really stuck with me, apart from very specific ones in Measure of a Man. Yeah. But you can not fail anything and still lose is good.
Yeah, it's one of those things that it's. I've seriously considered getting that line as a tattoo. It's like not one of my favourite lines in Star Trek: The Next Generation. It's one of my favourite lines of dialogue.
A fucking depressing tattoo.
Just a reminder. It's okay. Let me just put it this way: as somebody who's had a brain tumour, it's nice to be reminded that bad things aren't your own fault.
In 20 years, when I'm incredibly rich and you're homeless, and because I'm so rich, I've forgotten about you as a friend, and you're in a cardboard box, and you're trying to text me, and I'm just like leaving you on red, right?
I like the fact I've still got a mobile phone even.
Well, they do, don't they? All these homeless people, you're always seeing them in their Ferraris and their mobile phones and that. So that's why we should ban immigrants. So, I hope you look at that tattoo and think, could I get something a bit happier than this?
It's not going to be like the only one. I'll put like a picture of like a smiling dog or something nearby.
Here's what I want you to get, and if you get this, I'll pay for it. I want you to get the quote from Captain Picard, right? What was it again? Say it exactly.
It is possible to make no mistakes and still lose, Mr. Data. That isn't weakness, that is life.
Right, I want you to get, it's possible to make no mistakes and still lose, Mr. Data. That's not, what was it? That's life.
That's not weakness. That's not weakness, that's
right,
life.
I want you to get that in a perfect circle around a picture of Postman Pat's head. If you get that, I'll pay for it.
Well, I mean, they're on strike. Solidarity, my brothers.
Yeah.
Why Postman Pat? That you lean to? He's not even my favourite of the kids' TV shows. I'm more of a Fireman Sam man.
I do like the kids' TV show. So for anyone who isn't aware, so Postman Pat is like a stop motion animation for very, very young children. I think it's based on a series of books, and it's literally about this guy who's a mailman, right, a postman, and he'd literally
Postman Pat, and he has a black and white cat,
a black and white cat called
right?
Jess, and on the side Jess solves murders. But
never the black guy.
no, there's no black guys in this small Welsh village that Postman Pat lives in, and he just pods about in like his little post van and solves problems, like really minor problems that would directly affect him as a postman. Like if a road is blocked, he'll get people to come out and help, and it's about solidarity and about like Fireman Sam. I feel like we shouldn't really have to explain that. Fireman Sam is a fireman, and he's a fireman. I don't know. I imagine that they're set in the same universe because they have the same design. I don't know if we ever got a crossover. That would have been the Avengers Endgame of me being 5 years old, right? But I do like that in the 90s, Britain was like, let's make cartoon cat, not women, obviously, but let's make these animations, but have them be the most socialist of the of the jobs.
Yeah,
like, you really want people to like everyone is going to support firemen all the time, right? That is never not going to be the case. Like firemen would have to do a lot. It's already it's instinctually the sexiest job. It's not even the sexiest job if you think about it for a while. It just is the sexiest job you can do.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, like, it's of all the emergency services, like, okay, if you're a doctor, you might have a bit of a complex.
Yeah.
Okay. There's a lot of reasons why you could be a paramedic. There's a lot of dodgy reasons. You could be stealing pills. We don't know.
Yeah.
Right? I hear the sirens going of the police behind me. There's a part of me that goes, do a pull over?
Yeah.
Do a let them go through? Fucking... But the fireman... Yeah, like, and it's also like nobody, no matter how capitalist you are, is proposing a for-profit fire service, right? That is it's the most socialist thing you could ever have.
Yeah,
it's like because they used to have a for-profit fire service in ancient Greece, and let's just put it this way: the person who owned it was a very wealthy man who owned a lot of property.
They used to have it in London. In fact, if you are in London and you go down to Goodwin's Court, which is a couple of streets across from Leicester Square, it's one of the streets that people claim is the inspiration for the book version of Diagon Alley. That's not true. There is no inspiration for Diagon Alley, right?
Yeah, Diagon Alley is more Camden than Market.
It's not anything. Else. It's Narnia, right? For as much as she is a terrible person, she has a good imagination, and Magic Street isn't difficult to fucking visualize, right? But what it actually is, it is one of the inspirations for the movie designers. So if you want to see... If you're listening to this and you're interested in Harry Potter, if you want to see one of the closest streets to a real-life Diagon Alley, go to Goodwin's Court. But there's actually quite a lot of interesting thing in this tiny, tiny little street. One of them is that Nell Gwyn's house is there. Do you know who Nell Gwyn is? Have you heard that name before?
Name rings a bell. But...
She was the primary mistress of Charles II.
Oh, yeah.
She was an actress. She acted, I believe she acted at the Globe, if my timeline is correct. But she was an actress, or maybe she didn't because she wasn't a man, but she was an actress, and I believe she was an actress at the Drury Lane Theatre. So if you go to the Drury Lane Theatre, you can still go to what they call the Tunnel, which was a tunnel that Charles II had built under the Drury Lane Theatre to go down underground and up into a pub where they would meet. Because obviously, obviously the royals are all fucking everyone, right? I mean,
those secret tunnels.
Kate is a beard.
Yeah.
Prince Albert for Victoria was likely the opposite of a beard. I think she was his beard. But they're all fucking. Yeah. They're all just fucking whoever they want, right? But back in the day, this was just like regular knowledge. Like everyone just knew that this was occurring. So anyway, eventually he bought her a house on that street, and it still has a sign above it. But to the point. Sorry, this is what I'm like as a tour guide. Hey, do you like going on tangents? Let's go. But in Goodwin's Court, if you are at the far end and you look up just under the white windows, you will see a little gold plaque, which looks a bit like a bishop's hat, and that's called a fire mark. And basically, there used to be different fire brigade companies in London. You would pay them insurance, and if you had a fire, they would come and put your fire out. The problem was, first of all, if you paid your fire insurance but your neighbour didn't, they'd put out your fire but not theirs. Or if you had different fire insurance, they would just sit there and watch it burn. So ironically, those fire marks are now worth a fortune because most of them were destroyed in fires. The one down there is worth about 15 grand if you ever.
The one in ancient Greece is the fire service would turn up and you could either pay them an extortionate amount of money to put the fire out, okay, or the guy who owned the fire service would wait until your house burned down, and then he'd buy the land off you for a pittance. And it's like he'd offer you less and less as your building more burned down until you eventually took it, and then you get the fire service to put it out and you restore the building. Yeah. I
feel like I don't feel like we should prosecute thought crime, right?
That's a very
until it
view.
becomes. I don't think we should prosecute thought crime. Maybe when it becomes spoken crime, then that's a different thing, right? Like you can't just go around calling for the death of all Jews and then just being like, it's fine. My dog said that. Where's the joke, you fucking prick? Anyway,
that's enough about Kanye.
That's about a very specific Scottish comedian.
Let's just say, all I'm gonna say is we've look, if we've had a very, very, very happy event happen this week, you can't just say that. For example, the people whose children had been shot at a school, you can't say that was made up. And you can't accuse the fucking people of who lost their kids of being liars and con men. Can you, Alex? Yeah.
Did you enjoy? Have you seen the video where he? Very little Star Trek in the Star Trek episode. It's not a great episode. It's fine. Riker does the Kobayashi Maru 2.0. So
yeah, and it only works because they cheat. It's like there's not.
That's what Kobayashi Maru is.
Yeah, the Ferengi show up at the end, and it's Armin Shimmerin again because he's the only person who ever plays as Shimmerin.
We'll get back to that, right? But first of all, we shouldn't prosecute thought crime unless someone is like, hey, maybe it'd be a good idea to privatise the fire service. I think that person should be executed immediately, like by the people in their company, like because we're like we can't. That thought is a virus. Like, we can't let it get out.
I think if you think that the fire service should be privatised, you should be set on fire.
I think you should be privatised.
No, it was set on fire, and then we'll negotiate a price.
Yeah,
for putting you out.
And also, and then we'll be like, well, the thing is, you didn't pay this before you went on fire, so really, you need our services more now than you did before. So, I don't know. Maybe it was a stupid idea to. Maybe it's insane that you went to business school for a 5-year master's degree and then came out a libertarian, isn't it? Yeah. If you're listening to this, you know I'm talking about you. You fucking leather jacket mustache cunt. This material's pretty strong. I'm calling out all the assholes. And you know what? James Meakin can fuck off and all.
So the thing is,
why'd you have to be so fucking fat and weird, the same as we were, and then you went and got skinny and good looking, and I run marathons now, you fucking wanker.
Doesn't drink anymore, either.
What a cock.
Yeah, he's weak.
No, I take it all back, man.
Yeah,
genuinely have
really.
all the time in the world for James Megan.
he's a really nice guy.
Yeah.
I think there's a rule: if we name a comedian on this podcast by name, we're okay with them. If we don't mention you by name, you mustachioed wanker, libertarian asshole, and your bald friend who loves video games, then we've got a problem with you.
Yeah, because that could be anyone, mate.
That's me. No, I wouldn't be friends with a libertarian.
What was the top? Oh, that's
Screw
that's
getting
what
cancelled.
that's
This is
what
one
was
that
going to
doesn't
get
get
back
us
up.
booked.
What's that?
Yeah, said screw getting cancelled. This is the podcast that doesn't get us booked anywhere.
So what was the top about? Oh, aye. So so Riker is on like a shitty old ship, right? It's so shitty that they later reuse a shot from season 1 when they're towing it with they're just reuse. It's the Stargazer. It's the same model as the Stargazer. It's really shit.
It's the Hathaway is the one in this, and it's
named after actress Anne Hathaway. And so it was.
There's a lot of space work in the future.
Everybody's really into Interstellar. There's a ship called the NCC, the Princess Diaries 2.
You go in the future. There's an episode of Star Trek they're going to do at some point in the future where they go to the Anne Hathaway Museum on Earth, and it's very little about a movie career and much more about a groundbreaking approach to astrophysics.
You still haven't watched Lower Decks, have you?
I haven't. No.
So there was a bit in Lower Decks where this was all the way back in season 1, so I can't really remember it. But they're erecting like a statue to someone, and. Well, we were going. I can't remember how exactly how it goes, but I think they were like, well, we were going to erect a statue to this person, but it turned out they were terrible. So instead, we're gonna erect a statue to the greatest man in the history of Starfleet, Chief Miles O'Brien. And it's just like a 40-foot golden statue of Miles O'Brien, which is now canon.
Brilliant.
Yeah, so he has to pick a crew to go onto this terrible ship. Now, this ship doesn't have warp because they don't have. Well, first of all, they don't really have any dilithium. I think Geordie scrapes some dilithium off like the inside of the chamber.
Yeah,
and
they need some
antimatter.
antimatter.
They don't have any antimatter.
Yeah. So you just steal some.
So they steal. So Wesley, in quite a fucking baller clandestine move against the actual crew of the Enterprise, the flagship. This should be what people are taking away from this test. They should be like, no, it was great. Because, spoiler, Riker passes. But they should be like, no, it's great that Riker passed. But, sorry, how did this kid that you let drive all the time, by the way, how did this kid outwit you? The president from 24? No, he's not the president, was he? He's Dennis Haybert.
Yeah, Mr. Burke was in charge of security. Let's just, we talk regularly about how great a character Miles O'Brien is. We don't talk regularly about how great a character Mr. Burke is. That's because he's letting fucking Wesley steal fucking antimatter off the ship right under his fucking nose.
Also, last week, did we mention Diedrich Bader?
We didn't.
Oh, as a bridge, not an officer, but he's certainly a bridge man.
Was he?
Yeah,
I didn't spot him. Did he play?
He's standing in at the security console, and Laura noticed it first. So Laura was like, one of my favorite games that Laura and I play is that Laura isn't as good at me. She's good at recognizing people, but she's not as good as immediately being able to know where she knows them from. Now, I'm not incredible. It's not like I can rhyme off someone's entire IMDb, but in our house, I tend to be a little bit quicker off the mark with like, oh, I know who that is. But what's quite fun is that when she notices something that I don't, and then she just starts like she saw Diedrich Bader, and then she paused it on a shot that wasn't Diedrich Bader, and she was like, "It's him from Things," and then I was like, the things that I know Diedrich Bader from, Office Space, being quite a good Batman voice in Batman Brave and the Bold, and Jane Silent Bob Strike Back, is not what she knows him from.
Yeah, no, me and Emma have that frequently where I'll see somebody in something and I'll be like, oh, it's so-and-so, and I'll list off minor background demon 14 from an episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, or he's in an episode of Star Trek or something like that, and then I have to sit there and in my head to go, no, what do you know him from? Oh, Christ. And then like, he's in a, oh, no, he was in a, oh, no, you wouldn't have seen that. And then eventually like, oh, he was in a, and then you name like a Jennifer Garner, he was in 13 Dresses or something like that.
Yeah, because I will say earlier in this rant, I said that I am better at this than Laura. That's unfair. She is as good at it as I am, but her references are different. So she'll immediately be like, "Oh, that's Kronos from Gilmore Girls," and I'm like, "Kronos?"
Oh yeah, yeah, the Kronos.
Yes, remember that season where the Greek god of time moved in with Sean Gunn. Adventure.
That's
so it is fun. It's fun finding that common ground. Like it's weird, isn't it? I feel like because a lot of the people in my family are normal. And I feel like if I tried to explain to them, no, like one of my favourite parts of my relationship is when we pause the telly and one of us tries to find common ground with the other one about where we know this very minor actor from.
Yeah,
it brings me so much joy and warmth that's a thing that's happening in my life.
I love being able to go, oh, it's that bloke, and like reel off like an episode of like Buffy and an Angel and like for other things, they'll be like, and then like name like a romantic comedy that I have only seen a trailer of from like 1987, and just go bang, and then I remember go, oh yeah, I have seen that.
He's from the concept of 27 Dresses. So going back to Dan Harmon for the second time this episode, because this martini is very fucking strong. Like Robbie Coltrane, who it's dedicated to. Live long and prosper, Robbie, in heaven. But wait, what were we just talking about?
Wesley stealing the antimatter.
No, the exact last thing.
Diedrich Bader.
Oh fuck! Oh, I've lost it. Oh, I was going to make such a good point. Oh, I'm going to listen back to this, and my brain is going to get to that bit.
Yeah.
Let me just. What I'm going to do for the rest of the podcast is just not really listen to what you say, but just nod, and then eventually I'll remember what the point was I was going to make. Anyway.
Yeah. But anyway, yeah. Riker's underestimated in this episode by the strategy guy because of his inappropriate joviality. And Picard has to be like, no, that's why people like will follow his jaws of death because he's quite a likable man.
Yeah. Also, he's my first in command of the flagship. How many times do I need to underline this? There's obviously a reason I hired this guy. You fucking idiot.
I like. It's like, oh, he's
constantly given the opportunity to become a captain, and he keeps turning it down because he just loves doing this.
Yeah,
Why do you think you're going to beat this cunt?
Do you think he's weak because he's like humorous? Oh, he doesn't take the situation seriously. He literally laughs in the face of danger, and as a result of that, Worf will follow him anywhere.
Listen, what was the guy's name?
Oh, I've got it written down. Kohlrami.
Listen, Mr. Kohlrami, have you ever seen Star Trek, the original series? You know how in that Captain Kirk is... Well, this guy's Captain Kirk.
It's almost as if the writers of this show decided that the character of Kirk was so important that there should be somebody who has the similar attitude due to him on board this ship. Yeah. So that in case our new plan for having a different type of captain didn't work out, we could always kill him off.
Yeah, yeah. But no, Wesley stealing. So Wesley, because Wesley sort of very after school special, very very special episode of the week. It's like, well, he's talking to Jordan. He's like, well, we can't cheat. Obviously, that's bad, isn't it? We can't cheat at this. And I think I can't remember if it's Geordie or Riker. Someone is a bit like, the point of this isn't to win, but if we can win, that's great, isn't it? This is a problem that is frequent in TV shows that have an episode like this, where you got a war games in military thinking. The problem is that writers are strategists. Yeah. So
the only thing they can ever work out that would work in this scenario is cheating.
Yeah, but so we'll come back to that point, right? So Wesley kind of they don't have any. They have some dilithium, but they don't have any antimatter. So Wesley is like, oh, and he goes to Captain Riker, and he says, listen, I know we're not really supposed to swap back and forth, but I actually have a very important experiment running over on the Enterprise that I forgot to turn off. Do you mind if I go and fix it? And Riker's like, oh, for fuck's sake, alright. Ensign Crusher needs to be transported over the Enterprise. So he goes over to the Enterprise, where he's met by, and your man, the stratagem man, is like, okay, he can do it, but only if he's under constant supervision. So he goes back, and Dennis Haber is like, takes him to the experiment. Wesley lifts it up, and he's like, oh, fuck, it's dead. Do you know what? Just take me back to the transporter. And he kind of makes out like, I'll just dump it on the way. Like, during transport, I'll be like, yeet.
I think he's like, I'm gonna use the transporter to yeet, to beam this up, but not beam it anywhere, so that it's dead and I don't have to worry about it. Operation Yeet.
But then he goes back to the NCC Angela Lansbury, and he's like on the shuttle, Jessica Fletcher. The shuttle was called Jessica Fletcher. Did it, all of it. and he's like, hey, found some antimatter. Now at that point, I turned around to Laura, and I was like, but wouldn't this be what every test in Starfleet is? Like, who can find the best way to get around the rules? And she was like, no. She was like, you need to stop being so fucking obsessed with the Kobayashi Maru, because that test is a very specific thing. If they just decided that in the future every test is about how well you can cheat at it, anarchy.
Yeah, there must be like a basic oh, how good are you at physics?
Yeah.
And it can't be who's the best at sneaking in a textbook.
And also, right, so the idea that in the future of Starfleet, the Kobayashi Maru essentially becomes not an example of showing you a no-win situation. It essentially becomes, how well can you cheat this fucking thing that we're giving you to show us what you can do in the real world? That concept comes from a novel written by Shatner. So Shatner is just like, well, I did this, so obviously it is the standard. Now, I like that because it's an interesting idea. Well, but that can't be the way it works.
It makes up for there's a thing in Star Trek. Like, every race kind of has a thing.
Yeah.
So the Klingons are ultimate warriors, the Romulans are really sneaky, the Cardassians are fascists, whatever. Everybody's got their own thing that they do, and because we're humans, we kind of think of humans as being the default, and they don't really have anything. Yeah. But the humans are actually lunatics who are regularly just doing shit that everyone else in the universe is like, well, that shouldn't work. If you watch Enterprise, the I think the plot of Enterprise, like the way we built the first ship, the first Enterprise, is that the Vulcans helped us out by giving us 2 warp cores, and they were like, "Oh, so you can build 2 ships." And the humans went, "Well, what if we strap both warp cores together? Won't it be faster?" And the Vulcans were like, "That's insane. You don't have anywhere near the level of technology to do this," and the humans just did it like that.
Yeah,
like
because I imagine they then turned round, because I've only seen very select bits of Enterprise, but I imagine they then turned round to them and said, "But you've evolved beyond this. It's crazy. You're crazy people. Why would you want to do this? I mean, think about what Zefram Cochrane would want," and then they'd be like, "Zefram Cochrane basically built warp travel to clear his gambling debts."
Yeah, he built warp travel in his garage to clear his gambling debts out of a nuclear missile.
Yeah.
Like, the man was a lunatic.
And he almost refused to fly unless he had the specific song that he wanted to listen to on in the capsule.
If you watch Star Trek, the number of times where the idea that the Federation comes up with to get themselves out of any situation is absolutely insane. Like, they've been like, "Oh, what if we turned off what if we eject the warp core and blow it up behind us? It'll push us forward a little bit." So it's always, and imagine that everybody else is like, "What did the humans do? They did it's crazy." Yeah. Like, and we'll get onto it later on, but we try to introduce the concept of individuality to the Borg. That's our clever plan. It's like, "Oh, well, if we program this virus, it'll drive them insane. But what if we just make this one accept that he's an individual and then put him back in the collective?" Yeah. So I like the idea that they do a war game scenario. I like one thing I really like in this episode is that they're doing like second in command should sit in the chair next to Riker, and Worf is like, "Well, Geordi outranks me. He's a more senior officer. It should be him." And Riker's then like, "No, we're not doing the freaking engineering challenge, Worf. I want you next to me so we can do we can do clever guile tactical thinking." Because I quite like the fact that Worf's not up for war games, like playing at the beginning. He's like, "Well, there's no point because we can't actually die.
Yeah.
So there's no point in doing this."
But then Riker's like, "Do you want to be my first?" And Worf's like, "Fuck yeah."
I do like the implication there is that all Klingon battle strategy is developed not through tactical thinking or war games, but like, "Well, we tried that, it didn't work, 16 people died. Let's try this instead." It's the Zap Brannigan school of thinking. Just send them wave after wave of men at them.
So so a couple of years ago, many, very many years ago, 6 years ago, Secret Cinema done Star Wars. Specifically, they done The Empire Strikes Back in London. If you don't know what this is, right, we are not going to explain it. Just go and look up Secret Cinema Star Wars. Yeah. No, fuck it. I'll explain it a little bit. So basically, you go to a place, and when you are in that place, which in this case was like a warehouse in Canada Water, they have transformed that into Star Wars. Like, it's you basically what you do is you live a New Hope, and then you watch The Empire Strikes Back while there are live actors on stage also acting out the things that they did. It's an unforgettable experience. Like, if you're a movie fan, it will change your life.
They change up what movie it is like, and so and everyone I know who's gone to see whatever the film is, it enhances and improves. Like, for they did the Back to the Future ones, they built 2 of the square valleys. They built 2 of them so that you could have it in 2 separate time periods. Just incredible. And
my friend, who's an actor, I was like, "So what are you doing on Back to the Future?" And he said, "Oh, we just work in the post office." I mean, what does that mean? And he said, "So if any of the audience want to write a letter to any of the other audience, they come into the post office and write a letter, and we'll deliver it to the other audience." It's complete immersion in a story and in a world for a few hours. The Blade Runner one was breathtaking.
Yeah, I've heard about that. Like, everyone got a pack beforehand where you were told whether you were a human being or a replicant.
My character in Blade Runner was a male sex worker who was a replicant masquerading as a human.
Oh.
And so I had a headshot made up of just a random actor from the 70s. And whatever I can't remember what my character's name was, but it was like Mark O'Neill, totally human, sex object, not robot. And I had that on my CV, like on my headshots, and I'd give it to like pretend nightclub owners. Anyway, the what was my point?
Star Wars.
Fuck, it was a secret cinema. No, it's gone. I mean, it was probably something about how good immersion is, like about how immersion can take you, even if you're not super willing. I think it was probably about how I bet there was a lot of people who were just like, yeah, that seems fun. I'll go in on this. Like when you're in a secret cinema set, everyone is in on it. Like there's almost like a magic that happens when you step over the threshold, and obviously there isn't a magic. Secret cinema over years have figured out how to do this and how to cultivate it. But there's like a magic when you step over that, you are that. Oh, that's my point. It was 2 points. Is that our characters for the Star Wars one is that I was a rebel pilot.
Oh right.
And Jamie was he was like an intergalactic space pimp that the rebels had to protect, because they give you a backstory. So we sat down and we came up with, why would these two be hanging out? And we realised that what Star Wars doesn't have is an A-team. Like, what the Rebel Alliance needs, and we called them Joker Squad, is that Joker Squad, they're all A-Wing pilots, because to be an A-Wing pilot, you have to be crazy. And basically, the Joker Squad are who the Rebels send in if, like, we can't figure out how to fix this, so let's send 6 lunatics at it. Just to see what they do. So in our narrative, like, if you're an X-Wing pilot or a Y-Wing pilot and you do something particularly crazy during a mission that maybe gets someone else hurt or killed or in danger, then they're like, well, we can't kick you out of the Rebel Alliance, but we're going to demote you to fucking Joker Squad, where we're going to constantly send you into suicide missions and just, like, figure out how you and 6 other fucking maniacs get out of it.
Yeah. Coming up with completely insane strategies is the human strength. It's what...
it's why I really, really like the A-Team movie. Because the A-Team the A-Team isn't so much a story as it is a plot set up for an hour of television, right? There's a person who needs help. They find the A-Team. The A-Team get captured somehow, and then they build some kind of mad apparatus and then beat all the baddies, and no one ever dies. But the movie, not only is it an origin story, it was basically a bit like, well, what if we hit these guys with like 3 challenges over a period of time, and what are they like in between that period of time? Fucking, I love the A-Team movie.
It has one of my favourite, like, gags based on skills that the actors actually have, which is the fake IDs get mixed up when they're making them, and the character guy playing face gets his passport, and it's the passport that's supposed to be B.A. Baracus's. So it's got his photo on it, but it's got all the details, all that, and then they read out all of it, and they start talking to him in Swahili. And he just talks back in Swahili because the actor can actually just do that. And then he walks through it afterwards. He's like, "You speak Swahili?" He goes, "Yeah, don't you?"
The A-Team movie has in my top. This might be in my top 10 movie lines of all time. Not because of its actual importance or beauty as a line in itself, but I just like what it represents. Which is, so there's a bit in the A-Team movie, and Laura, you've heard this, right? I think I've spoken to you about this 8 dozen times in a relationship. So in the A-Team movie, Jessica Biel is like hunting the A-Team because she was like Face's girlfriend, and she thinks that they're traitors because she hasn't figured out yet that they were set up and blah blah blah. But she knows that they're maniacs. So there's a bit where they are on like a military carrier plane that also has a tank in it, and the plane they manage to get out of confinement, and the plane blows up, but they're in the tank. So the tank falls down, but they get parachutes up, right? So there's 2 parachutes hanging out the back of the tank. So the tank is floating down to the ground, and they send in like a UAV, an unmanned aerial vehicle, like one of your Predator drones, right? And I think it's Face or Hannibal is like, Face, get on the gun. And so he turns around the cannon and he fires the cannon. and one of the guys with Jessica Biel in like the command center is like, are they trying to shoot down that drone? And then it cuts to Jessica Biel, who has the biggest eye roll in history, and then just goes, no, they're trying to fly that tank. The line reading is so perfect. And now when I write things, I'm always thinking about, no, they're trying to fly that tank.
I will say this: the A-Team movie didn't do well enough at the box office to like get like a franchise off the ground.
Oh, and it's
I'm gonna
such
say
a crime.
I don't know what you want from your movies if you don't like the A-Team. It's not the greatest movie ever made, but it's a movie in which they are using the physics. Like the tank ends up at one point falling face like straight down from the sky, like about a mile up, and they are using the gun, firing it at the right moments to push them backwards, which slows down their descent enough so that when they hit the water, they don't all instantly die. It's amazing.
It is that thing of like, I think people think that I'm like I'm like this movie snob, and I am. Like, there's a lot of movies where I'm like, that kind of sucks because it didn't do movie making very well. But at the same time, I am not a fucking have a good time snob. Like, the 80 movie, yeah, it's a 5 out of 10 movie in terms of movies, but it's a fucking 5 out of 5 good old time, son.
No, you're exactly right. It's like, I would sit there and I can wax lyrical about like the actual artistry in good storytelling, but sometimes I want to watch a movie in which a tank gets dropped out of a plane.
I will watch Wild Wild West whenever it's on television, because no one has ever made a fucking weird steampunk western as well as Wild Wild West.
It's the only movie to ever feature a mechanical steam powered spider. If that's not enough for you, I don't know what you want from cinema.
Salma Hayek's in it. Looking great. What more do you want? That's like a sprinkling of that's like the parmesan on the top. The meal was already incredible, and then they were like, "Here's Salma Hayek." Thank you.
So what do you think of this episode of Star Trek?
Do you know what's weird? Is because I've gone through this whole thing about how I didn't really remember it. I actually did. I quite liked it. It very much just felt like a week in the life of the Enterprise crew, and that's what I enjoy that. Like, as much as I enjoy the big questions and the huge concepts, I just like, what is it like to be these people?
Yeah, I quite like that at the beginning. Picard's like been resisting during the war games, and he says it's because they're explorers, they're not military. But the Borg are scary, so let's deal with that. Yeah, but to
go back to the lines I really like from the Star Trek movies, Scotty says that. Simon Pegg's Scotty says almost that exact thing. He says that because it's when they're having to put on the torpedoes that spoilers are like Khan's sisters or whatever.
Yeah.
And he turns around to Kirk and he just goes, "Why? I thought we were explorers." And I think it's how much I like Simon Pegg's Scottish accent, but I just really like the way he reads that. That's another bit from a movie that I will watch out of context.
That is a
But
because it's I get the impression that's a line that was. I imagine that Simon Pegg had some input on that line being in the film.
Yeah, big time.
Yeah. Because I have a lot of problems with Star Trek Into Darkness. Like, specifically, the ending scene is... At the end is Spock savagely beating a man with a big piece of metal in his hand. You know, like Spock does.
I also think it's ironic if you're making a film about how you think 9/11 was an inside job, and then later on you have 18 9/11s happen.
Yeah. I was thinking maybe you should have like, we're going to change the characters around and have different things happen with different people. It's like, well, that works to an extent, but you shouldn't have Spock do Kirk things.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't do Kirk things because he's not Kirk, he's Spock.
Yeah, that's why Kirk doesn't do Spock shit. That's why Kirk's like, fuck this, I'm just going to go and fuck someone. Anyway, that was the episode. Yeah. I hope you enjoyed it.
I hope you like that one.
Yeah.
Go watch the A-Team.
Yeah. Watch Joe Callahan's A-Team. It's great.
All right. Bye.